Today we're going to look at the Articles of Confederation. We're picking up after the Declaration of Independence, which was 1776. So it reads the year 1777. Years passed since the Second Continental Congress wrote and passed the Declaration. Revolutionary War is still going on. It will last another 5 years, but at the time, they have no idea how long it's going to go on. Leaders begin to realize they need to have some sort of plan in place if they win the war. After all, if they do win the war, they will be free from King George of Britain. So back to Philadelphia they go. Many of the same guys that were there the year before for the Declaration showed up. There were some new ones, though. There they agree to write America's first Constitution. So the first question we need to ask is this: what is a constitution? A constitution is a written plan that provides the basic framework for a government. It has to be written so we know what it says. It just can't be said out loud and then say, well, this is a constitution. It needs to be written down. And it's basically a setup for a new government. The Articles of Confederation was America's first attempt at a constitution. So keyword here is attempt. What we're insinuating or implying here is it didn't work, and we'll see that. We'll see why it failed and why they ended up scrapping it and writing a new constitution, which we have today. So it was called the Articles of Confederation. We need to know what confederation is. Confederation is a loose grouping of people or states or countries. So think of it as a club, and the people in the club have something in common, but they're not super tight. They're not best friends. They're there for a common thing, but they don't agree on absolutely everything. So under the Articles, and we're not going to spend that much time on it, but under the Articles, we're going to see why it didn't work. So today in our current Constitution, we have three branches of government. We have executive, which is the president and the White House. We have legislative, which is Congress and the Capitol building. And we have the judicial branch, which is the courts. Under the Articles, they only had one branch, and it was the legislative branch. So there was no president. There were no system of courts. In Congress, and we'll define that in just a second, each state got exactly one vote. And that might seem fair at first glance, and you could certainly make an argument, but some people were upset with this because it meant all states were absolutely equal. So a small state like Rhode Island had just as much power as a large state like New York. So New York might have 20 times as many people, but they only get one vote, where Rhode Island, which has 20 times less people, only gets one vote. So that was an issue between the big and small states. What a Congress is, and you need to write that down, even though it's not underlined, it's a group of elected officials who represent an area. Main job is making laws. Congress today, Congress back then, they did other things besides make laws, but that's what they spend their most time on. So group of elected officials who represent people of an area and lawmaking. So under the Articles, Congress could do four things. And all these were good things. They could make laws, but not enforce them. We'll talk about that in a second. They could coin or print up money or borrow money from other countries. They could set up an army. Obviously, that's important for protection purposes, and they could deal with foreign nation and Indian tribes. So Congress could do some good things, but we're going to see they weren't allowed to do enough. Oops, this is repetitive. Ignore that, please. We already got that. Okay, so reading on it says, therefore, the national government didn't have much power. And the reason why there was no president, and Congress couldn't do that much, is because when they're writing this, they're at war with Britain. And the whole time they're remembering back about King George and Parliament and how much they hate them. So they're doing the exact opposite. They're not giving a lot of power to the national government. Therefore, Congress couldn't do many things, including couldn't tax the people, could not pass taxes. And again, at first glance, that might seem like a great thing, but taxes are important. Today, taxes give us things like schools and roads and parks and libraries and all the thing we come to expect. But Congress couldn't pass any taxes. It could set up an army, but it couldn't draft people. It couldn't force people into the army. So if you go to war and no one volunteers, you don't have much of an army. And finally, it was unable to enforce laws, could pass laws, but not enforce them. Enforce means to make sure people do what is required. So the easiest way, if you have a hard time remembering what enforce means, remember police are often called law enforcement, and the main job